All right, you guys, we're going to start out by doing a wash for the sky. So I'm mixing up my cerulean and my French ultramarine. Create a nice sunny day sky blue. And for the wash, lots of water. And I'm going to use the point of my brush to get around these shapes. So you see I've got my bead of water forming. So I make sure that I'm wet enough to do a full wash. And then when I'm about 2/3 down with my sky, I start adding in a little bit of rose, and then I'll transition to the yellow, and that will be my atmosphere. So I'm just pulling that sky down to my horizon where the hills are, and then I'll let it dry. So once it's dry enough, I'm going to switch down to my smaller detail brush, and I'm going to mix up some muddy purple for that faraway purple color for that background mountain. So just add a little yellow to the purple to dull it down. I'm just going to fill in the shape for that background hill. Now I'm going to do that hill that's a bit closer, and so I'm going to use the cerulean and the yellow to make that green for the closer hill. And I'm going to just leave little gaps where those big power poles are sticking up so that I can keep a highlight on them. So just leaving that little separation in there. So now I'm going to use just really light blue. I added a little bit of that purple to dull it down, but I'm just putting these rooftops on the far, far away buildings back here. They're a light color because they're so far away and the sun is hitting on top of them. Now let's do the building part. So I'm going to dull down that yellow and just add some of the mud from my tray and have kind of a soft beige yellow for those faraway buildings in the center. And use some more of that same beigey yellow mix for the underpainting for this whole church that is in front of this, or in front of those buildings in the back. And I'm keeping that extra white highlight on the front of the chimney because that's where the sun's coming in, blasting the side of it. So now I'm switching back to my bigger mop brush because we're going to do the ground area and those are some big shapes, so we want a big brush. And I am mixing my orange with that cerulean blue, and that is giving me kind of a gray brown color for the far away part. And I will add more orange as it gets closer because the warm colors are the aggressive colors and they bring us forward. Now I'm going to mix up some kind of dark muddy purple to throw into the foreground area just so it's got some texture. And then I'll do the same thing for the land on the other side, using more of the blue mix for the far away, and then adding in more orange as it gets closer. Now we got that transition from the warm to the cool, and just dash in a couple of dark marks in the foreground for some texture. And now we can work on the road, and so I'm making kind of a grayed down purple mix, just the rose and French ultramarine, then add some mud to it. And I'm using the darker mix for the far away road. And then I'll water it down more for the road that's closer to us. And as I get closer, I'll kind of skip around a little bit, leave some white patches so it looks like it's getting hit by the light. And then I've got that same purple mix I'm going to use with my smaller detail brush. I'll make a little bit of the details for that far away building, so I'll give it a window and a door. And it's not too dark and heavy because it's far away. So now I'm mixing up a darker purple, and that is for the shadow side of this building. So this whole side of the building is in the shade, so it's a bit darker since it's closer to us. And then when I get into those little windows and door areas, I'm only going to skip around and leave some small spaces where there are highlights popping through. I'm not leaving the whole window or the door open. So the trick here is to leave some things unpainted. So I'm just pulling this wash of purple across, and you can see a little bit of the warm yellow glowing through underneath. Ties it all together. And here, see, I'll just leave a tiny little gap so that there's a hint of a window, not the whole thing. And there we go. Now, this building has a strong cast shadow from the light coming behind it. At first, I'm going to add a couple more little shadows on the details up here in the window. Alright, so let me just add some more of this purple mix. And I'll pull that across. And there, I leave the lines a little bit squiggly. So now we can move on to this little cluster of houses in the center, and I'm going to give it an orange rooftop. So I put a little bit of mud into my orange so it's not too bright of a color, and keeping it a light wash because it's getting hit by the sun. And get this other side too. Now I want to make kind of a dark brick color, so I'm going to use the rose and the orange together with a touch of the French ultramarine to get it dulled down and darker. So that will make kind of a maroon brick red. And this one I'm going to leave the windows open. So this brick building has the other building in front of it, so I'm painting around the subject. And then I'll give it the chimneys. I keep little gaps in between some things, give it that extra little highlight and separation. That other little one back there. And then with some of that cerulean blue mixed with a little bit of mud to dull it down, I am going to put in just a couple little window panes. So I keep the gaps open around it for the white part. Now that other little face of the building, I'm going to use some of that beigey yellow mix from before just for that little chunk there. And with some of that dulled down purple mix, I will just give the sides of the roof up there a little bit of shadow. And another little shadow under the front gutters there. Then this part of the building is also in the shadow, but it's got a little bit of a beam of light where the roof cuts off. So adding a little bit, tiny bit of detail with the shadowing on here. And then I'm going to put some little window panes on here also. And now I want to tie in that orange from the roof, so I'm using that same color for this door here. And then I'll use some of that purple to give it a shadow. And just like that door's got a shadow, these buildings behind here also are getting shadows. So we're really just trying to capture the light. That's what it's all about. So just a couple finishing details now. I'm going to mix up some of that cerulean with the yellow for some green over here. It's like just a little box on the side of this wall and give it a shadow. And then I'm putting that shadow side on the back of the pole so it has that little highlight on the front there. Make sure your shadow sides match so that the light source matches. And then with just the tip of the brush, I'll put these side posts on there and I'll let it skip around so it's not too thick and heavy. And then I will add just a couple of extra little details, some fence posts, and then just make sure that they are kind of wonky in different directions, not all facing the same way and not evenly spaced. We always need variation. And then just a couple extra little shadows coming through. Maybe fling in a couple little grasses up in the foreground. And there you have it. So please remember to like and subscribe, and more videos will be coming soon.